Okay, gang, as I'm getting closer to finishing up all the panels on the 65 Mustang, I'm working on the deck lid. Now I want to show you this because there's some information here that I think needs to get out for anybody who's trying to do body work or do any kind of restoration work. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. You know, I have, you know, my own little issues that I deal with, and I just see things that are done by people, and they're doing it thinking it's the best thing, and it may help, but it really doesn't. And I just want to show you a few things. This is the original, or not the original, this was the last layer of paint on this car, this grayish blue. Then you have this green stuff. That was a primer. Underneath that is the original blue. In a few places you've got some sort of a red that may have been a filler, one of the cheap spot filler stuff. And then up here we've got some brighter blue. I don't know what that was, but I see that this hood, or this deck lid, probably had little rust pits. So the tendency for people is to take and grind these things down and make them go away, at least get the rust out. But what you end up with is a very low spot in let's say a small area. In other words, this right here, no matter how much primer you put on top of that, this is not going away. I don't care if you block sand it, prime it, block sand it, and prime it. I will still see that when the paint is done. And so when you see on TV these guys are taking a gallon of body filler, usually it's something like Rage or Evercoat, and they're coating the whole thing. The only way to make stuff like this go away is to have everything uniform. And what I mean is, I'm probably going to end up using a very similar technique and take some filler, and I'm going to thin it down a little bit with some lacquer thinner so it spreads easier. But I'm going to probably coat almost this entire thing with filler, very thin coat. But what happens is when you block sand that, not only does it fill in those low spots, but it makes a uniform color and a uniform depth. And believe me, if you don't do that, stuff like this will come back and haunt you. You know, especially if you open up your trunk lid and you see the sun hit it just right, that is going to pop out. Every one of these is going to pop out. So I just want to show that. What I'm going to do, my next step is obviously I'm going to make sure all these areas are treated okay. I may use some self-etch to cover up the bare metal, but I'm also going to have to sand out a little more. I see there's a little bit of a shiny ring behind this one right here, so that means there's still, there you go, you can kind of see that. I need that to go away, so I'm going to DA this a little more. I'm using 80 grit, and I'm just going to knock it down a little more, and then I'll show you more of this process. Okay, so I sanded off the rest of that bluish gray color. There's a couple little spots still here, but those are okay. I left the primer that was on top of the original blue. There's nothing wrong with this. It's solid. It's not cracked or peeling, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now in this process, some may say, well, why don't you just take it down to bare metal? Well, I could do that, but I'm not going to gain much because there are dents and dings all over this thing, and I'm just going to have to fix it either way. So by leaving this here, I've got protected metal that I'm not going to worry about. But I wanted to show you this too. This is a little trick we use at the shop, and to some people they wouldn't be able to really feel this transition to where this is the low spot and the outside is high. And your hand may not be sensitive or may not be, you know, comfortable doing it. It's just something, it's a learning thing that obviously comes with time. But what you can do is take a paper towel, put it between your hand and the part you want to check, and run it across. And you'll be amazed at how much more that sensation shows up in your hand than just doing it barehanded. And I can run this all over this panel and find all kinds of high and low spots. So even at that, I'm going to have to fix everything. But just a little trick you can use. Give it a try. I'm sure you'll feel the difference. And I'm using quick sheets or clean sheets, which you should be able to get at any paint supply. I get mine through PPG Rep. You can see the color change, and some people really don't like to spread Bondo or filler. Some people that have done it with, or done sheetrock, usually have more success with it. But there I have a good color change, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. I'm not trying to pile it on so that it's making it a 1/4 inch thick. I'm just putting it on, spreading it, and making a base build. And most of this is going to come off anyway, but I'm just kind of showing you here. Because I want a standard surface to work with. And when the metal's all wavy or has a bunch of flaws in it, you can work 1 or 2 little areas at a time, but this way gives you a much more consistent surface to work on. Now again, I'm not piling this stuff up. I'm just trying to get a uniform base. If you mix too hot, you're not going to have enough time to get it all on the panel. I've done that before. I'm going to switch to another putty board or spreader. This one's just a little bit wider. If you want, you can even come different angles. Because again, I'm not trying to make it thick, just trying to get a consistent layer. And you can see it's getting a couple little hard spots in it. So really, shouldn't be doing much more of this. That's where I'm going to stop, I think. So anyway, that gives you just an idea of what I'm shooting for. I'm going to coat the other side and then move on. Okay, so I've let the Evercoat filler dry for a little bit, but I still feel a little bit of a tackiness to it, so it's not really ready to sand. But one thing, a body shop trick, is take some lacquer thinner, and this is a ketchup bottle from like Walmart. Just transfer it over. They hold up. We've used these for years. But I'm going to put some lacquer thinner on this paper towel, and I'm going to wipe the top surface of this. Now what this does exactly, I couldn't tell you how the chemicals react together, but it'll help that top layer dry so that I can hit it with a sander and not gum up my sandpaper. Now this doesn't have to happen every time. It just so happens that today the humidity is pretty high, and it's causing it to delay the drying process. So we'll let that dry out a little bit, and then I'll go to my next step. Okay, I'm just going to move on. It still feels just a little tiny bit tacky, but I want to just make some progress here. I'm using some Mirka 80 grit paper on a DA, and all I'm going to do, the only reason that I'm using this right now is I want to just knock down the rough edges from where I was when I put the filler on. I'm going to continue that. I'm just not going to waste of time showing it.